If you couldn't tell, I am a giant weeb. I even have earphones where the box they came in has an anime girl on them. And being a weeb that also plays video games, I was very excited for the release of Persona 5 Royal on PC, but being a Linux gamer, I was kinda worried, because Persona 5 Strikers for a very long time was basically unplayable, so I was very happy to see this. At TGS 2022 at an official Atlas booth, they had a Steam Deck playing Persona 5 Royal, so probably means the game was going to be verified, and pleasantly to my surprise, on day one, it released Steam Deck verified. But that's when I noticed a problem. I checked ProtonDB, and while it worked pretty much perfectly on the Steam Deck, there were some frame rate issues and some resolution issues, but nothing major. I was very disappointed when I saw this right here. The game completely borked. Some people had a little bit of luck with it, but everybody else, it didn't work. And you have no idea how many weebs run Linux until something affects them. This issue basically exploded non-stop for 3 or so days, going over every single thing that the issue possibly could be. At full price in Australia, this game is $100, but even so, people wanted to play the game. So it didn't matter what kernel you were using, what distro you were using, what hardware, what Proton version, what star sign you have, no matter what you did, the game, for the most part, would get to the main menu perfectly fine, but if you selected New Game, it would instantly crash. Possibly you'd get to the next loading screen, but then it would crash. If you opened up the settings menu and you changed any setting, anything whatsoever, instantly crash. And if you changed your version of Proton, sometimes the crash would happen a touch earlier. It instead would happen when you get to this screen right here. It's going to show I guess, saving icon, something like that. System data, creating system data here, and it's gone. So at least what it seemed like is it some sort of issue with saving data? Because if you get to that starting screen and you don't new game and you don't change a setting, you can stay on that menu as long as you want. You can rewatch the intro cutscene, do all of that fun stuff. It's not until you save anything that any problems occur. So someone had kind of a brilliant idea. We know that save files work on Windows and on the Steam Deck, so why don't we just take a save file from one of those devices and stick it on desktop Linux? And it turns out that would actually work, whether it's manually moving the file over or doing so through a cloud save. But it didn't keep working consistently because if you change a setting or you save the game, it crashed again. And this isn't just a one-time report. Other people reporting the exact same thing. They change a setting, and it crashes with the same error, create file transacted A, not implemented. And it's a 100-hour JRPG, so you can't exactly finish it in one sitting. A lot of people going through this testing were also dumping out their logs just to try to work out what the problem could possibly be. And obviously, everybody's logs looked a little bit different. This person, for example, is using Linux 5.18.14 on NixOS, but they all shared the exact same problem. Unimplemented function kernel32.dll.createFileTransactedA. So what is this function? Well, this function is a part of the Win32 API. It creates or opens a file, file stream, or directory as a transacted operation. The function returns a handle that can be used to access the object. Now, without going too deep into what transactions are, basically they are what are known as atomic operations. They're an operation that cannot be broken down into their subsequent parts. So if you go and use this function to create a file, the file is going to be created before anything else happens. But you probably shouldn't use it. Microsoft strongly recommends developers utilize alternative means to achieve your application's needs. Many scenarios that TXF was developed for can be achieved through simpler and more readily available techniques. Furthermore, TXF may not be available in future versions of Microsoft Windows. Effectively, this is a deprecation warning. And to make that even more clear, the link to alternatives using transactional NTFS is literally deprecation of TXF. Now you may be wondering, when was this actually deprecated? So this function was introduced all the way back in Windows Vista, but it wasn't really a popular feature. So after Vista, it got deprecated. But if nothing else, Windows is incredibly good at backwards compatibility, basically to a fault. So even though you probably shouldn't use this, and you shouldn't have used it after Vista, it's still present, so some people still use it. Keep in mind, this is a port released in 2022. The current version of Windows is Windows 11. Between Vista and 11, there have been a lot of OSs and plenty of time to realize it's deprecated and you probably shouldn't be using it. I don't have any, high-level game dev experience, so if anyone knows why someone might still want to use this, please do let me know. But from what I've seen, there's no reason. At this point, we are pretty sure we know what the problem is. For one reason or another, this function is not available. But before we get to the solution, another problem started happening. So Persona 5 Royal is a de novo DRM game, and among other things like giving you a worse frame rate, it also has some anti-crack protection. Now, you can question how good it actually works, but one thing it does really, really well is locking legitimate users out of playing their games. So, this screen might happen. If you tried to open up the game too many times and it failed to launch, it would say, hey, currently your game purchase cannot be revalidated successfully. Please wait 24 hours and try again. So a lot of people trying to test this game and get it working on Linux were getting locked out of the game. Oh, how I love modern gaming with digital licenses where they can be revoked for any reason whatsoever, where we use DRM systems that can lock you out of a game that you've paid $100 for. What a great time we live in. I get why they use it. It's to slow down the cracking process to make it so it takes so long that you get outside of that initial release window, which is where the game sells most of its copies. So if it takes you like 2 weeks to crack a game, the game's made 95% of its sales anyway. It doesn't really matter that the crack is now available. Now to the solution. Developers familiar with Wine very quickly noticed a problem. Create file transacted A is not supported at all in Wine. And it's not just not supported, file system transactions are not supported in Wine. Right, but then why does it work on the Steam Deck? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If it's relying on a feature that isn't supported in Wine, it should just be broken everywhere. And it's not like Valve is running a modified version of Wine anyway that has it implemented, because they have a stub here, and all it does is prints out a debug message. Then the next theory became, is it even running these functions on the Steam Deck in the first place? If it checks for a Steam Deck environment, does it instead use one of the alternatives? And nobody else has tried to corroborate this yet, but that does seem to be the case. I got a trace of running it both on the deck and on my desktop. Indeed, the create file transacted A function does not appear in the logs on the deck, nor does create transaction. So something about how it runs on the deck is bypassing the need to call the outdated create file transacted A function. Either way, because we can't modify the Persona 5 Royal binary, the only solution is implementing those functions, and that's what Itash Mathmasetti decided to do. I'll try to implement this and submit a patch upstream to Wine's GitLab, which can be backported from there. No promises though. And while that initial patch was dealing with the problem we were currently seeing, other problems may arise later down the line because all of these functions were being used as well. So Itash went and added all of those into his patch as well, leading us to this, I guess you would call it a monstrosity, whatever you want to call it. It is an interesting fix. It's technically not a stub, it is a semi-stub. So all of these still have that fix me message inside of them, but instead of doing nothing whatsoever, it redirects the function call over to the working non-transactional functions. Now, Etash didn't submit this to Proton GE himself, this was done by Lucas Vaz, and you might notice it's closed. It's not closed because this patch wasn't going to be added, it's closed because Glorious Eggroll likes to do things in weird and bizarre ways. So he closed the merge request and then handled it in a completely separate commit. Completely ignore the fact that it says Persona 5 Strikers. This is for Royal, and this patch is the exact same patch that was being shown by Lucas. He just decided to add some extra things and then not do it through the pull request like anybody else would. Now, I was going to say, as of recording this, there is no version of Proton GE that has this patch merged, but that changed about 2 hours ago. 7.38 finally released, and here we go, the save file fix has been added. Etash also did submit it to Wine Upstream, so hopefully at some point in the future, that also gets merged there. I initially thought it wasn't going to be merged because it's not like a full transactional implementation, but some other people are saying, hey, we'd be up for merging it, but you've got to split out your patch into multiple different patches, so one patch per function. Right now, it's a single patch that does everything. Also, it's apparently been merged into Proton Experimental, so you don't even need to use the Glorious Eggroll version. I generally use GE, but hey, if you don't like it, you can use the Valve version. Now, I absolutely plan to play this game, but I had no plans to play it anytime soon. It is 100 Australian dollars, so I was going to wait for the price to come down at least a touch, plus I want to get my new GPU. And when both those things happen, I'm very happy that the game is going to actually work. So thank you to everyone who put in a ton of work. Not just Etash, Lucas, and Glorious Eggroll, they were the ones who, got it merged, but everyone else who is dumping out logs and trying to boot the game and getting banned from it for 24 hours, thank you to everyone for putting in that work. So if you like this video, I'm going to go and like the video, and if you really like the video, and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, go check out my Patreon, subscribe to the Robertson, pay linked in the description down below. I've got a podcast called Tech Over Tea, I've got a gaming channel called Brodie Robertson Plays. That's going to be it for me, and I'm out.